Hey, welcome back to Ty the Movie Guy. Today I'm going to be doing a little roundup of the Criterion movies of the week that they put on through the Criterion channel. Starting at the start and then going until now. There's only a couple left before the actual Criterion channel comes out. If there's any notable ones, maybe I'll do another video, but for now, I figured I might as well round up the ones that they had so far. Alright, so the first one that they had up was Mikey and Nikki, and I was excited about this one because right when I started kind of getting into the whole Criterion thing, that was one of the new releases, and I'd heard a lot about it, and the cover looked really nice, and it was actually one I considered buying, but I'm glad that I was able to watch it that way as their first movie of the week. That one I was a bit underwhelmed by. The performances were great, and the way that Peter Falk and John Cassavetes worked off of each other in that film was quite amazing. John Cassavetes played like this really on the edge. His sanity's like fraying because he thinks someone's out to get him, and Peter Falk was pretty good at like being the friend that is just trying to make him feel better but doesn't really know how. And I mean, you could tell it was like pretty indie, and that can be good sometimes, like, but here you could tell maybe when the camera, either when they cut or maybe the camera stopped recording, because there'd just be a jump cut in the middle of a scene and you could tell that they're stitching together two takes. The chemistry was really great. Like, it almost just felt like you were watching a documentary about two great friends, because you could feel that they'd known each other for so long, those two characters, and that they had a history and kind of a rapport together that was quite impressive that they were able to pull that off. Cassavetes' character in this was kind of like an asshole, like a bit obnoxious, but he played that to perfection, so I mean, I can't knock it for that. The dialogue was like so snappy and back and forth, and sometimes people would cut each other off or they'd like stumble their lines, so I thought that felt pretty authentic as well. Some of the shots were like out of focus or a little bit shaky and stuff like that, and I mean, they were shooting on film, so they wouldn't have gotten to see it, and with like, I'm sure the nature of this film, they just had to go with it, especially with the studio trying to like take away her film, and the DP having to like hide the film reels and stuff, and Elaine May really having to fight to get this made. So I loved how much grain there was in the photography here, but like I said, sometimes an entire shot would just be blown out or out of focus. And so I was able to excuse most of like these analog technology shortcomings, but for the editing, it got pretty bad at times. Like, someone would be talking up a storm, like you could hear all sorts of lines coming from them, but on screen you could see they weren't talking, and so it creates this dissonance where you know that they're not trying to create that disconnect between the body and the voice, but they're just trying to make it look like that person's talking, and you can tell that they're not. I'd heard how like heartbreaking and harrowing the ending of this was, but I never like really felt that, because I didn't really feel for these characters as much as I thought I would going in, so it didn't really affect me emotionally as much as I thought it would. But I think it was definitely an interesting take on the gangster genre to see kind of a woman's take on these like hyper masculine, this very toxically masculine culture of violence and power and greed. She really wants you to know that they're not good guys. It takes that a step further than other movies like Goodfellas, in the scene where the guys go to visit the woman that he just assumes is a prostitute. They like both take turns forcing her into something that she doesn't want to do, and it forces you to sit and watch that. And that wasn't something I expected in a crime film, but I think it certainly helps to show that this world of crime is not something to be glamorized, and it's something gritty, and it's something with lots of evil in it. And so I liked it for that reason, but as I said, it was overall not quite what I had expected. I am glad I didn't buy the Blu-ray of this. So the next movie of the week was Chungking Express, and I'd seen it before, and at that time, like last month, I was super busy, and so I didn't bother to watch Chungking Express. I'll probably check it out again once the actual Criterion channel comes out, but I liked that movie a lot. California Dreamin' was stuck in my head for like 3 weeks after I watched it. I think I'll have to watch it a couple more times to really digest all of it, but It really captured like relationships and loneliness very, very well. Loneliness when there's so many people around you. I think that's what Hong Kong as a place brings so well to that film. But yeah, as I said, I haven't seen it in about a year, so I'll probably watch it again. Then there was the double feature that they had for Albert Finney, who had passed away that week or the week before. And I only watched the one this week because it was Tom Jones and it was Saturday night and Sunday morning. And Tom Jones, I have never heard a good thing about, and I've heard it's the worst Best Picture winner ever. It's quite long, and so I just didn't really feel like when I was busy dedicating my time to that one. But I did check out Saturday night and Sunday morning, and I liked it quite a bit, probably more than the one before. The industrial, like, capitalist setting that it sets up with the factories hit home for me, because I've worked in a couple of different factories, and I've seen people like that, and I've kind of been that person for a while, where you go into work and you hate it, and you spend your time all week doing that, and then on the weekend you go out to have fun, and you spend all that money, and then you're back in on Monday and you do the same. And I think that it did that in its pacing quite well, because it would have scenes of him at work, and then it would have him on his weekend, and then work, and then weekend, and it created this constancy to his weeks. It was like almost like an assembly line pacing to the film, or assembly line structure. Albert Finney was great in this movie as this kind of roguish, like, bad boy. I loved it. He's an asshole for sure, but kind of one of those ones that you can't help but like enjoy watching, much like Breathless or something like that. Just like shooting the person out his window with a BB gun and stuff like that, or it's just someone that you probably wouldn't want to be friends with in real life, but it's just so fun to watch his misadventures. And he was just like so cool and so smooth, kind of like James Caan in Thief, or I'm sure there's like lots of movies like this where you wonder if the actors actually like that, or if they're just very good at playing that off. But he was just a joy to watch in this film, and it's sad to see him go. I also couldn't get over how much he looks like Joel Edgerton. I thought that was funny. It started to drag a little bit in the pacing near the end, but I still liked what it did, where he has this directionless life of just wanting to have fun, and eventually he's hit with reality and he's got to kind of accept that. So yeah, this is a pretty fun movie overall. So next up was Stalker, and I was super excited to see this one added as the movie of the week, because this had been near the top of my list of movies to watch for a long time. When I first kind of started getting into movies, I was really into like sci-fi stuff, and I'd been watching like the Alien series, and like I've always liked Star Wars, so I was looking at like what great sci-fi movies were out there, and somewhere along the line Stalker had come up, and it looked super cool, and I knew that there was that Stalker video game series, and as well as like the Metro games that were based on it. I was always fascinated with Chernobyl, and so that kind of got me wanting to see this film, but I don't know, for whatever reason it took me this long to watch it. Then eventually I found out about Tarkovsky. Hadn't really gotten into his filmography other than just the docs and stuff that we watched in class about him, but this was perfect as an entry into Tarkovsky finally to get me to do it. I mean, the movie's like over 3 hours long, so I just took an afternoon. It's a very slow, very deliberately paced, and it's not for everyone. You just need to let yourself go and just experience it. But I really do think that this is a masterpiece of not only sci-fi storytelling, but of cinema. And I think everyone needs to watch it. And someday I'd like to have the Blu-ray of it. I think this was definitely my favorite of the movie of the week. So it starts out with this sepia tone look. It's in like the Academy ratio, which I've been obsessed with lately. The set design, as well as like the soundscape and everything when at this beginning part, reminded me a lot of Eraserhead. If I hadn't known who Tarkovsky was and someone just showed me like a frame from the start of this, I probably would have thought it was David Lynch. Like, the walls are just dirty, and you can tell they smeared like mud all over the walls, and a train passes by and it sounds like it could be like the end of the world. It's so loud, and there's just this oppressive feel to the city in this section. And I absolutely loved when they actually get to the zone. I guess this is spoilers if you haven't seen it, but there's like 5 minutes of just these ultra long takes, close-ups in profile of the three guys as they're riding, and the sounds are just like ratcheting up, and you can tell it's the sound of the tracks, but it almost sounds like otherworldly, and it really builds anticipation until suddenly, bang, it cuts to a wide of the train tracks, and it's in color finally. You've been 40 minutes into the movie of just sepia, and then there's color, and then that shot lasts for quite a while with a slow pan, and it was just mesmerizing. The whole movie was absolutely mesmerizing. It's so cool that there's this zone. It's supposed to be like a nuclear fallout zone or something, and it looks prettier than than Soviet Russia does. I thought that was interesting. And it's just honestly the best either set design or location scouting that I've ever seen. The places that they found are wild, and I really don't know how they found them or if they made them themselves, but there's like the tanks overgrown, all these bunkers, and there's these like moments of just people like almost like reciting poetry, like a soliloquy, and it just kind of shows you B-roll, almost like it's a Terrence Malick film. There's like lots of sense of surrealism, like with an owl that jumps into the frame and flies off, and the phone ringing while they're down there and stuff. It's almost like Lovecraftian horror in a sense, in the grandness of this tale of desire and of creation. You can definitely see clear inspiration on Annihilation, which I also love, so this was like right up my alley. I know that it's cliche, but like every single frame looked like a painting in its composition, its lighting, the color, everything was perfect. And it is very long, so rewatches like could be a little tedious, but this is definitely something I will revisit, and is definitely my favorite out of the bunch. So then there was To Sleep with Anger, and I hadn't really heard of this film, but I kept seeing like it was a new release for Criterion, and the cover like had some pretty like funky colors on it with that little paintings. This is definitely like a slow burn, and it never quite reached like the explosiveness that I thought that burn would lead to. It displayed complicated family dynamics quite well, and the way that Danny Glover's character kind of plays off of those dynamics to play everyone against each other. A lot like Lorne Malvo's character in Fargo or Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men. He's like this representation of evil or the devil that's there to kind of uproot everyone and everything. So I thought that was pretty cool if there's like a supernatural element to it, but it never really plays on that. Danny Glover was like really great in this, and so was Richard Brooks. The way that he would talk kind of like mumbly and low and like with his eyes down reminded me a lot of Lakeith Stanfield in Atlanta. My favorite part of the whole film is when the mother's walking through the living room and she goes up the stairs and it's pitch black, and then it's staying in the darkness, and then headlights go by like the window, and so Danny Glover gets lit up, and then the car stops, and then the light is red, and it like reveals him in the living room. I thought that was so cool that he's just, and it's so creepy, he's just standing in their living room like in the middle of the night. And I wish there'd been more of that. I felt like that was something like out of a horror film, and it never really quite got back to that. I'd really be interested to see like Jordan Peele tell this story. I think that if he like ratcheted up the horror and the tension, this could be like a really, really great film. But it was good. I like the ending about like how the kid is annoying people when he's playing that trumpet, but eventually he becomes great. And it was kind of like a heartwarming moment as it ended, so I liked that. It wasn't what I expected at all, but I did like it. This week's movie was Wanda, and I hadn't really heard of this, but I kind of read the descriptions and stuff to see what it would be like, and I was certainly intrigued by the concept and everything, and I kind of went in fresh without knowing much more than that. I felt it took a long time to get going, and that's usually not a critique I have with films, because I'm fine. Like, I like The Exorcist, how there's that whole like 20-minute section with the guy in Egypt. You have no idea what's going on, and then suddenly they get back to Britain and they don't really address it. Like, I'm fine with that. Creates like a sense of mystery, but like here it was really dragging on in a way that maybe it was supposed to, but it didn't really speak to me in any way. I started getting like drawn out of the film, and then I'd zone out, and then that would make me more drawn out of the film, and it was kind of like a cycle. So I was very bored. It didn't really do anything to grab my attention, certainly not plot-wise, but nothing aesthetically to grab my attention, and nothing really symbolically. So I was really like searching, and then once it started to get going, I feel like I was already out of the film enough that it had already lost me. But I did like also how grainy this was. I do love a lot of grain, and I liked like the color palette as far as the cinematography, and there was this one shot like at golden hour that I really enjoyed. But like sometimes the performances in this were like just plain bad. Like the delivery was just way off, or they'd like stuttered their lines. The stuttering almost felt like someone forgetting their line or messing up, and not like the way that people stutter in real life. I'd heard somewhere that this was really like a very tense like thriller, and I didn't feel that at all. I don't know if I'm missing something. The most tense I got is when she lost him in traffic, and I hate it when that happens in real life, so I was like stressed out, like, oh, I hate it when that happens. But then they go and rob a bank, and I felt less tense them robbing a bank than I did being lost in traffic. So I think a lot of this was meant to uproot genre conventions and do things differently. I certainly think the editing did that, where they're in the middle of something and it cuts away from it to try to like pull you out and not let you be comfortable. So I thought that was interesting, but overall definitely didn't speak to me. I'm not really motivated to watch it again. I'd say this is probably my least favorite of the Criterion movies of the week. And the product placement for Gucci was like so forced. I get that you got to get your film funded, or I don't know if they just love Gucci, but it even had Gucci underneath the title, and there's like a close-up on the guy's watch pan up to his face. I was like, okay, yeah, I don't know. This one wasn't for me, I guess. Especially as like such a big fan of the crime genre. It didn't really disrupt the crime genre enough to keep me interested, and it didn't really fulfill the crime genre enough to keep me interested. So I was kind of lost in this stasis in between. So yeah, that's my little roundup of the Criterion movies of the week. I just put in a shipment during the flash sale that they had, and I bought 4 Blu-rays. So once those come in, I'll probably do a video about that. And if the next few movies of the week really speak to me, then maybe I'll put something together for those. But I might just do a roundup once the Criterion channel launches, as kind of like a review of the platform and kind of whether I'll stick with it. Yes, so thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and leave a comment if you've seen any of these films and have any opinions on them. And I will hopefully be back soon with another video. My Thief review, I'm still editing that. It's pretty long, but I did love Thief, so keep your eyes out for a review of that, and I will be back soon. See you around.